What's going on, everybody? How are you doing, Paul? Danielle, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for texting me.
I have I've been using my iPhone, as my camera. So for the 1 hour during Freight Gong Friday, I feel really like I'm in a weird spot because I just don't know ever where my phone is, and it's pretty much.
Your camera's kind of glitchy, Christian. Maybe that's why it's like breaking up. It's like so I don't know.
It keeps breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Does. So,
normally it's fine. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Let's go. Good morning, Rob. Let's go.
Did you say? Oh, let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah, how are we doing? I feel like from last week to now, I sense, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I sense like a little bit deflation on your end, like defeatedness, like that you were defeated this week by something.
What? I didn't sense that at all. I thought you were inflated this week, but
I mean, there were some comments that were being made about like.
Yeah.
I wasn't really on social media this week, so maybe I'm missing out.
He's retracting.
I need to like back. I don't know why my camera is so close to my face.
I feel like you're like a B-list celebrity at this point, Danielle.
I beg your pardon. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I feel like you're like a B-list celebrity at this point.
Maybe like C.
C. Okay. Hey, that's pretty good.
I've been super busy. Still, I was very disappointed in the press conference by Secretary Duffy. I'm not sure why we called out just 3 states for not enforcing the English language proficiency when there's like 25 that aren't doing it. And then there's a group on X that has suddenly like flipped the script on all of this, and they're politicizing it just as much as the politicians, which is very, very frustrating. But
what does it mean they flipped the script? Because I forgot what the count was, but there was somebody who was kind of bucketing all problems together, kind of like broker transparency, the English proficiency language. I kind of couldn't even tell like where they stand necessarily speaking. Is that we're talking about the same group?
Yeah. And what's funny about like pushing, I get so frustrated when I see like the comments on broker transparency on this stuff, because like this one in Florida, they have their own brokerage. So I don't know what broker transparency is going to do to solve that. So I don't know. And that's the case for so many of them. Like the Terrell, Texas wreck, they also, that one wasn't tendered to them from their brokerage, but they do have a brokerage. So I don't know.
I was super confused by where they stand. Paul hasn't been on social this week.
Well, there's been a couple days where I kind of missed some stuff. But what I want to discuss is like the non-domiciled CDLs. The non-domiciled CDL, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, essentially means that you're a foreigner. You're not like a citizen. Is that correct, Danielle?
Yeah. So when the non-domiciled CDLs first came out, and I don't know when this was, years and years and years ago, there was something in the law, the regulation, that you had to have a CDL in the state where you were living or residing. And so we don't do that anymore, or we don't have to. So I could live where I live, have a CDL, move somewhere else, and my CDL would still be fine for a period of time. And eventually I would get it updated. But now the non-domiciled CDLs are given to non-citizens. And
and I think they're given out more in a nonchalant
yes.
Probably
oh my goodness, yeah.
Right.
And do you think that's because like the media narrative is that there's a truck driver shortage, and so like we should just get as many
Absolutely. I mean, this was one of the, like right now, the last push to get more truck drivers in were it is the foster youth and justice involved individuals, which is like people fresh out of jail and prison. Previously, it was immigrants, to bring them in and to train them and to get them out on the road. And the thing about Florida and all of this and many other states is if you go on their DMV websites, they don't issue non-domiciled CDLs. They do issue limited term CDLs. It's the exact same thing, just a different name. And so that was, I think I may have touched on that last week, but that was a lot of the frustration too, is because there were so many states that were like, we don't issue non-domiciled. No, you don't, but you issue limited term. I think there's only 5 states that don't issue any version of it.
And that's in Florida?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Florida is limited term.
The 2 lawyers that we have coming on shortly actually are Florida-based. So we might be able to ask them, because they're transportation lawyers, which I'm curious to hear their, how they see things from their vantage point. So they might be able to chime in on that.
There's something that came out in today's newsletter, by the way. So I'm gonna share it. There's sorry,
I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you saw this, but it might be tied into. I think it is tied to all the fatal truck accidents that we've been talking about. But FMCSA is to launch first fatal truck crash study in 20 years. FMCSA is preparing its first major study of fatal truck crash causes in nearly 2 decades, mandated by the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Let's see here. So it's going to examine Class 7 and 8 truck crashes nationwide. The last large-scale study dates back to the mid-2000s. With fatalities rising, FMCSA said the goal is a nuanced understanding of crashes so policymakers, law enforcement agencies, regulators, and other interested parties can implement effective crash prevention strategies. Results will guide new safety regulations and carrier practices. Have you seen this yet, Danielle, or no?
No. The results are going to be the exact same they were 20 years ago. It's going to be the number one. I don't know this is factual, but I would say that the number one cause of crashes is still going to be fatigue. And that's the reason we pushed and implemented the ELDs. So I'm pretty excited for this to happen. So the whole push of ELDs nothing.
You were on I think Freight 360, right? Talking about that. I didn't watch it. I just saw something on Twitter, but these ELDs things are crazy because I just remember in 2017, like the week that the ELDs were implemented, everyone was saying how rates are going to skyrocket and all this stuff. And it's like, well, literally there are ELD companies out there that just give you double logbooks, whatever, how many ever logbooks you need. Yeah. A lot of these ELD companies are based like in Eastern Europe or somewhere. And I actually know a couple of them. I'm not going to publicly disclose the names right now just because I am kind of worried about my safety. But like, I know these companies exist. Like, I mean, I was in Serbia. I was in Serbia, in a city in Serbia, and literally, like, there's this one ELD company that, like, huge office, and like, I know for a fact, like, what they do is just like you set up with them, and like they just give you how many ever ELDs you need, and I'm like, this is insane. Like, and they're like they're hiring like a lot of people out there, right? And it's like, literally, this is crazy.
You know that at least in the U.S. An ELD provider or manufacturer, like, basically self-certifies their ELD. Like, that's why this stuff's allowed. So like, we if we wanted to, we could start an ELD company, offer a double-sided logbook, and it's all good to go. So
yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I want to definitely get back to that topic here in a second. Michael Lombard commented, non-domiciled was meant for hiring purposes. A lot of carriers, Maverick, CR England, etc., have their own CDL schools. So if I wanted my CDL through Maverick or Prime, I'd get an Arkansas or Missouri CDL. But when I go home, I have to transfer it to Texas within a certain time.
So I was close. I knew it had something to do with the states, but it's being totally abused.
Yeah. It is being abused. I mean, for a long time though, and the Trump administration just paused this, was like you were able to get a visa to the U.S. And actually, I know Polish truck drivers that came to the U.S. Became truck drivers, and like so I mean, like, from my point of view, I was like, oh, like, for them it's awesome. Like, I know there's a huge trucking company of Polish roots in Chicago that was offering that program. Yeah, I mean, like, I it's cool because I actually talked to one of them, and I see him posting like stories on Instagram a lot about, like, trucking in the US. Like, for him, like, it's like a dream come true, so I'm curious, like, okay, the reason why we had this was because everyone's saying there's a truck driver shortage.
Mhm.
I
Which
don't know about everyone, but
a lot of
specific-
the media, like mainstream media, let's just say mainstream
Yeah.
media.
ATA specifically.
But like, okay, there was a truck driver shortage during COVID.
Yes.
So like it fluctuates depending on the market. So it's kind of
Which is
difficult to
ironic.
navigate.
Which is ironic if you think about it, because there was a skyrocketing number of new registered carriers during the
Yes.
same time period. Right?
Yes. Like insane amount of new carriers.
And we're still rebounding from the surge,
Yeah, we should
right?
get Michael
There was
on.
like this trend line increasing by like 3 or 4% a year, new US DOT numbers. And that basically trended along the same line of kind of like GDP growth for the most part. And then you just see COVID hit and like this
Yeah.
spike, which we're basically all coming down from now, right?
Yeah.
I
But
posted a tweet.
everyone was ordering from the internet. Like you couldn't, my town didn't shut down because we're just very Southern conservative,
I
but
don't think anybody in this, well, not anybody, but a lot of people in the South just didn't shut down.
yeah, no, I think 2 weeks of like, you notice something and then it was back to normal, but there was so much online ordering at the time. I think if we would have just slowed down on that maybe a little bit, and I know there are issues in the ports, but I think
Burns commented. Go ahead, Danielle. Finish your thought.
yeah. I mean, this aligns with what I was saying. The panic behind COVID, the online ordering or the surge in online ordering, everyone expecting things to be there the exact same day. I see how that fit perfectly into the truck driver shortage narrative. And then, which I've been getting into lately, and it's very fascinating, were the PPP loans behind all of it. So you could get anywhere from like 9,000. The lowest I've seen so far is 9,000. You could get anywhere from like 9,000 to $40,000 for your quote unquote company. And then I don't know what they were doing with it, starting trucking companies, buying trucks,
buying Ferraris. I mean, I know the schemes out there. Like there's people going to jail for it.
Didn't G-Face go to jail for that?
Probably. G-Face, I think, went to jail for a lot of reasons, not just one.
There was a guy in Georgia that had 2 trucking companies and something else, like 10 trucks apparently, huge mansion, super nice cars. He was indicted not too long ago. But the trucks never ran. Like it was never a actual trucking company.
Well, yeah, we have. Let's bring up Bryan and Bill. Billy.
Hey, everybody!
What's going on, man?
Not much, man. I'm excited to be here, guys. For the chat and the discussion. Billy should be joining us here shortly.
I see Billy, this is not connected right now. I can't add it to the studio at the moment. But
and
unbelievable.
We can get this going while he figures that out, and we'll add him onto the stage once it is.
Bryan, give us a quick intro. Yeah. I want everyone to know who we're talking to right here.
Bryan Nelson, transportation attorney. I have been in transportation, specifically brokerage, motor carrier, and the TMS space for 16 years. 12 years of that, I was general counsel of a third-party logistics company, subsidiary motor carrier entity, subsidiary TMS, and then came to private practice about 4 years ago and doing all the same things I was doing in-house, only now for a whole bunch of different clients. So that's a quick spiel.
Thanks for joining us today, Bryan.
Of
we
course.
Have a lot of hot topics to discuss.
Yeah, and I apologize for anyone that goes and watches this in 1.5 times, later. I generally speak in 1.5 times, so just know that it will be very difficult to understand. Yes, they can slow it down when I talk and speed it up for everybody else. Perfect.
Or we just all talk really fast so that when people readjust the speed, they'll have it normally.
Well, I'm super offended because my wife hates listening to anything in 1.5 speed, and I'm like, this is just how I talk, so I can only imagine what she thinks of me. So just know that. Yeah, we'll start that way.
Well, all good. We should be able to keep up here, but Bryan, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, well, I guess the reason why we brought you on today is talk a little bit about like the legal perspectives on recent fatal crashes. I know Christian's the one who invited you to come on, and so Christian's definitely gonna have some questions, but it is somewhat of a hot topic now. Last week we had Danielle on. We discussed about the accident that happened in Florida.
Mhm.
That was, I think, just hit mainstream news. It was all
Brian,
over.
How close was that to you? Was that close to you in Florida or no?
So Florida is very long. So I would say that the turnpike is on the other side of the state generally. And so then it runs up kind of the middle of the state. So it was a couple hours away from where I'm located.
Cool.
And we got Billy here. Hey, Billy.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We can't.
Yes.
Good morning, Billy. Yes, we can.
Oh, my goodness. Thank goodness. Good morning. It's great to be here. I'm sorry, I've been a little beset with technology problems. I'm at the lake this week with my family and just getting ready to head back to Atlanta.
All good.
Good morning, Billy. Could you give us a quick intro as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a partner at Taylor Nelson Slattery and Bernard with Bryan. My practice primarily focuses on trucking defense litigation for truck companies and their drivers. I also have a consultancy practice where I train truck drivers, supervisors, and company executives on how to mitigate their litigation risks. So basically that's what to do, and more importantly, what not to do when there's a crash, how to gather evidence at the scene, and how to prepare the best defense if there is a crash.
Do we need to post up a banner on the live stream like this is not legal advice? Make sure to cautiously consult an attorney.
That's it, exactly. And there's a lot. The fun thing about being a transportation attorney is that there's actually quite a number of really good ones throughout the country. I think our firm is full of them, but there's a lot of really good ones that we collaborate with across the country because licenses kind of stay where you are when it comes to litigation. Now, corporate work, I can kind of be a little bit more malleable. But yes, this is not legal advice. This is general discussions, possibly a little, humor, maybe some sadness. Maybe we'll all cry at the end of this. I don't know where this will lead us.
Well, Brian and Billy, I'm curious to hear what, with all the years that you guys have been representing trucking companies, defending trucking companies, of all kinds, what is like the craziest thing that either of you have been through or have seen, have witnessed in the sense of like it was just so bizarre you couldn't it took you a second to kind of digest that things like this happened. Like, are there any stories like that you guys have to share for us for an opening?
Go ahead, Billy. I see you smiling, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of, which one, right? And unfortunately, a lot of them are really grisly, right? I mean, a lot of truck crash litigation ends up with fatalities, right, or very serious injuries. I think one of the craziest ones that I ever recall being involved with was it was a multi-vehicle accident. There were several tractor trailers involved, but also several regular vehicles. And there was one passenger vehicle occupant who was smashed in between a couple of trucks. And if you looked at the car, you would never, ever have imagined that anyone survived it, right? I mean, the car was essentially a third of its normal length, just smashed from both ends. And that driver got out of the scene with like a scratch. And it was just astonishing. It's like a couple of inches in one other direction, and it would have been a very different outcome.
Were they driving a Tesla?
I don't remember what kind of car it was, but I don't think it was an EV.
They got a five-star crash rating, so it's probably the best car to be in if you get sandwiched by two trucks. But ideally, not ever in that situation.
Not in that situation. So mine's much more lighthearted. So I deal a lot more on the corporate side, your cargo claims. My favorite is always, which happens more often than you would expect, is that people like to transport their livestock along with their cargo. And I'm not talking about just pets in the cab, but every now and then they will bring livestock into the back of their trailer along with their cargo. So that's always fun to see, and then try to explain while their chickens are cleaner than other chickens. So hooray for those discussions.
So like, okay, alongside some pallets, there's just
chickens. Just some chickens.
Like, these are like truck drivers, chickens, or are you like who's loading these chickens? Like this, just like I don't know.
I don't know if it was like side of the road type situation. I don't know if because we could not get his story straight, and if he told me, I probably wouldn't believe him anyways. So, just people like to commingle things. So if you don't have it in your contract that says don't commingle, people just assume you can. So I've seen motorbikes, I've seen motorcycles inside of like strawberry shipments. I've seen chickens inside of, either, they were canned goods, so they were at least sealed, but still can't have that going on. So,
Okay. I actually saw a video, and I've seen a few of these videos of truck drivers with pet pigs with them, and like there was this one viral video on Instagram that I reshared it on. Maybe I could find it here in a second, but it's a truck driver who, first of all, had like 2 dogs, and like then like 2 like huge ginormous pigs come out of the tractor, the semi truck. I'm wondering, like, from like an insurance perspective, like those pigs, are they protected in any way, or like, I don't know, is there any point of having a discussion about these pigs right now, like from a legal point of view?
no, other than it's extremely fun. No, the pigs generally, we actually have sold. Slattery, who handles a lot of our real estate transactions for facilities, trucking facilities, parking facilities, and others across the country, we actually had to put in language because the owner of a trucking facility maintained pigs, and not just any pigs, he maintained show pigs. And so we had to work that in, that he needed appropriate time for the mental health of the pigs in order to move them to another location without stressing them out as part of the sale. So yes, pigs are relevant in transportation in all sorts of ways.
Wow.
I guess if they're in the cab, I'd be concerned that maybe they were a bit of a distraction, but I don't know. I'm thinking way back to my childhood, and what was it, BJ and the Bear, the guy that rode around with a chimpanzee in the truck?
Yep.
Yeah. These are like, there's just so many things that people do. I can't wrap my head around sometimes, especially in this industry.
So I would love to get Danielle here involved, because Danielle's been going like viral on social media. She was on the Steve. So last week she was on Freight Gong Friday, and right after doing our show, she was on the Steve Bannon show. So like, it's the first time we ever had a guest that after doing our show went on Steve Bannon. So like, pretty big, I guess.
Good deal. Yeah.
It was a big feat for us. But I'm wondering, to get Danielle here involved, like with everything that's going on, Danielle, like right now you have 2 amazing lawyers here, transportation lawyers. I'm wondering if you have like if you could pick their brains a little bit with everything that you're covering at the moment.
Yeah, my biggest question is with the chameleon carriers, or those that rebrand time and time again once something happens. And I've reviewed way too many documents, court cases, and Pacer over all of this, but I rarely see information from the previous companies pulled into a new case. So I don't know if there's like a legal limitation there where you can't pull in and say they already had 17 wrecks and killed 12 people, or if that's
so that's a great question, and that's really a rule of evidence question, right? So traditionally, your evidence is going to be limited to evidence of the parties as they are at the time, right? But there are exceptions where, for example, if you could prove that this is some sort of attempt to conceal or otherwise defraud, the public from important information. A lot of that is actually dealt with in the weeks leading up to trial, right? And what we call motions in limine, where the judge starts to issue a lot of rulings on what evidence can come in and can't come in. And one of the things that I find so interesting about the practice of law is it's really a patchwork, right? I mean, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I mean, whether you're in state or federal court, or whether you're in one state or another state, and then even within a state, from one county to the next, which way the judge is going to rule on those things is one of the things that's exciting for us, because we never quite know.
And there are a few C.H. Robinson cases out there, and C.H. Robinson being kind of the canary in the coal mine, just based on their size. They're constantly being brought into various litigation, which leave a whole bunch of breadcrumbs for us transportation attorneys to say, oh, we like that, or we don't like that. We're concerned with this. We have issues with this. There are where they've looked at it and said, hey, listen, this is historically, they had the same name. So there have been a couple cases where it has been publicized. But to your point, a lot of times it's not brought up, because what they'll look at is if there's someone that's regularly a chameleon carrier, that's likely because the carrier has only been in service for a little bit. And so the plaintiff's attorneys will kind of hedge on that. Hey, how long have you known this company? You didn't know this company as well? What other facts? Usually if they're a chameleon carrier and they had issues before, they probably have issues now. And the plaintiff's counsel will focus on those generally in these accidents. But it also comes to the fact that if you're a chameleon carrier, you're probably not coming up and putting up defense. you're probably not present during litigation, and then your brokers are the ones that are fighting this, under F4A outside of the, the defense of the motor carrier.
So can you legally have one truck, so like one VIN number, and the same truck driver like running on multiple MCs at the same time? Like, is that legal?
So not on the same, you can't have it on the same time. So it can be trip by trip in what's called trip leasing. And as an independent contractor, in order to comply with being an independent contractor, right, you need to have the freedom to work for whoever you want, whenever you want. But if you are utilizing under the truth in leasing regulations, which details kind of, hey, if you apply to these, we're not going to hold anything against you for compliance with these. But if you don't, you may have some issues. But also complying with this the truth in leasing regulations under the federal law doesn't mean that you're complying with all the various state requirements for workers' comp, unemployment, minimum wage, although minimum wage generally should not apply unless you're only doing intrastate. Anyways, when we go to those kind of discussions, and we're talking about the commuting carriers and the individuals are separate from commuting carriers, because those individuals can be trip leased to multiple carriers. It's just on that shipment, when they have been dispatched, who are they operating for? And so long as they have a copy of the independent contractor agreement in their cab, the truck markings are appropriate. As much as we hate it, and as my broker clients, right, they put on magnets on the side. Now they're one carrier. Now they take them off. They're another carrier.
Yeah.
It also requires, when you do that, just because they're working for somebody else, you still have the ELD requirements, and you have to look back as if you just hired them again. You need to look back at their time in service when they were with that other carrier. So generally, a lot of truck drivers don't bounce from spot to spot because they have to give a lot of duplicate information, and it's just stressful on the motor carrier. But they technically can do it, but they cannot be operating for more than one carrier at any one particular time.
Got it. So like if they finish a trip from point A to point B, pick up another load, they could put on a magnet, new MC, and that's legal. Nothing wrong with that.
If they have the appropriate lease in their cab, and the cab is appropriate in line with the truth in leasing regulations, yes, that is appropriate.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and that was really big right after deregulation, 1980. That's not what they're doing now. Because I get that like pushback all the time.
What are they doing now?
They're just moving from one USDOT to the next one.
That's it. They don't have leases. They don't have. They're just taking markings, putting them on the side. And if you're ever a broker, and where brokers, generally don't like to ask for a lot of information because they shouldn't. It's not their job. They're not the motor carriers. But when you have these, CARB compliance in California, when you would ask for ARB numbers or ask for VINs to see their vehicle age, to compare that with the age requirements early in the aughts, you had VIN numbers that then aligned with a different motor carrier. You're like, this is a different motor carrier that's registered with ARB. And they say, well, I'm an independent contractor for this company, which can still comply with ARB in that manner. But then you say, well, then I need a lease agreement to show me that you're actually operating under this company. Well, that lease agreement, it's usually written completely incorrectly. It has probably like 2 pages when a real lease agreement is, and I've drafted them up to like 40 pages. They're complicated documents. And so a 2-page document where they have the lessor and leasee flipped really doesn't give you confidence. So to Danielle's point, they are literally just, why would we care about that? We'll just flip it over. And then the insurance companies are left fighting. And that's why motor carrier insurance rates keep climbing.
I think I got quoted an annual, like when I got my CDL a few years ago, this was like right before COVID. I think I didn't have any driving experience whatsoever. I think my first insurance quote was like 42 grand a year. It was insane.
42 grand. That sounds insane. That doesn't sound reasonable.
Yeah. It was like, I was like super young. I was like 21, 22 years old.
Starting off. What's Brian or Billy, do you know what like the average rates right now are for like newcomers to the industry, or like any ballpark range? Like what's typical?
Yeah, I don't know the numbers. I can tell you that, ATRI, the American Transportation Research Institute, does a study on that periodically. And their last one that came out was that insurance rates were the most significant. So they take a look at everything that's increasing for motor carriers, right? What are all the costs? And the leading cost increase was insurance. And I think it was in the study before that too. So the rates are just climbing crazy.
The way that they calculate insurance also, I looked into it, and it doesn't, a lot of it doesn't even make really any sense whatsoever. It's just like if your company is based and registered in, for example, a dense urban area of Chicago, like Chicago zip code, versus you being based out in, let's say, like Elk Grove Village, like the price difference just by where your company is registered is quite significant. It has nothing necessarily speaking to do with your driving records or anything like this, but I found that to be like really.
So another interesting part about where you're located. So for all the brokers out there, if you're worried about whether you have a fraudulent COI from a motor carrier or not, one of the things that we would do, based in Florida, we did a lot of Florida freight. And if Progressive does not write reefer breakdown policies if the motor carrier is domiciled in Florida, I have no idea why. I have never been able to get an answer. It's not like Florida motor carriers stay in Florida or that other motor carriers in other states don't come into Florida. But if you have a motor carrier and their address is in Florida and you have a Progressive certificate of insurance and it includes reefer breakdown, that is a fraudulent certificate of insurance. And so there are those stupid little things that you're just like, why are we doing this? And I posted yesterday, and another resource, Christian, real quick on the pricing of insurance. MCIF, the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation, is a great resource to go in and really understand what's going on. They do great educational programs. The conferences are absolutely wonderful. I think, Billy, you presented at one.
What is it called?
The Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation. Our partner, J.W. Taylor, is one of the fellows for that organization, and he does great work. He keynote speaks there, talks about insurance. We're constantly dealing with issues in the insurance market. One of the issues that we're dealing with is brokers. If you have a sister company, what we're finding is that there are very few policies, if any, right now, where if you have a broker and you have a sister motor carrier entity, you have contingent auto here for the broker, auto for the motor carrier, and you take a load because everybody that has a broker and a motor carrier, they say, I want the load to be with my broker. I want the contract to be with my broker because then I can give it to my carrier if I need to, but then I can also go out into the world and comply with MAP 21 and unlawful brokering regulations. Well, your contingent auto probably does not provide coverage if you contract to your related motor carrier entity. And in my, I talked about this on LinkedIn, and it was one of those things where it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And insurance is like, well, we feel safer with the devil we don't know. And so they're not covering you from your contingent auto. And so they have all these weird things that nobody can explain why we have them. And so the organizations like MCIF, as well as our firm, those are the things we're trying to fight to try to bring down insurance costs or make things more available to providers.
Bryan and Billy, I'm curious, like from a court case perspective, that like what you're working on typically, what kind of court cases are you most likely like dealing with? Because you're working with brokers, freight tech companies, trucking companies. Like, what's like most common? What kind of court cases?
Most common for me would be truck crash litigation, right? So, you see when you drive down the road, and there's no shortage of them. You see all those billboards.
Yep.
Trucks and the millions of dollars. So
you have a billboard for
the folks that I'm in court with. I'm just on the other side of it, right? I'm defending.
On the other side. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So you're defending the truck drivers.
Yeah, you guys are with the plaintiff? No, defense attorneys? Defendant,
correct. So I usually represent certainly the trucking company and then typically the driver. Usually they sue both the company and the driver, which is interesting because in almost every single case, the company is going to be liable for the driver anyway. But I think they do it in order to put the driver's name right there front and center in the litigation, right? Also to rattle the driver's cage a bit, and make them nervous that, oh my goodness, I'm personally involved in this lawsuit. And so, one of the reasons I love that litigation, look, I really, really enjoy working for the really big clients, the big transportation companies. That's fantastic. But what really keeps me going is working for those drivers, right? Because, they have to come sit with me at counsel table. This is, usually the hardest time in their professional career. Most drivers are remarkably safe, right? And so if they do have a serious crash, it's a once in a lifetime event. And so for me, this is more than just the practice of law. It's really an effort to sort of minister to these drivers and walk them through, a real trial in their life.
Yeah, I mean, even one accident, even if you had a perfect record, can be, not only life-changing, but potentially career-ending too.
Bryan, you were going to say something.
Yeah, it all changes in an instant.
No, what I was going to say is, so a lot of this stuff, just based on sheer volume, there's more accidents than there are cargo claims. It just is what it is. We handle most of it. If we're doing tiers, right, it's your defense, then it's your cargo claims, it's your general disputes, whether that's demurrage, whether that's some sort of freight payment issues, and then you kind of jump into real estate disputes, employment disputes. Those are the types of things that we litigate, all with an eye towards transportation. And obviously, rental disputes or any type of physical damage disputes that we get into, that insurance companies, because insurance companies, when they hire us to do any type of defense, we're defending. We can't bring those causes of action unless they hire us separately from the defense part. So if an insurance company hires us from a defense part, we have to turn around and we have to, essentially, insurance is the shield. You need to pay out of pocket to be any type of sword, and we can help with that. So if you have a defense, you have a counterclaim against somebody else, we can come in and help that as well.
So we got a question here from Ed Burns on the big lawsuits. How often are the broker or shipper brought in as co-defendants? Do you think that impacts how they look at carrier vetting?
Yeah, so I'm seeing that more often, right? Where there's and of course, we have sort of patchwork law, about that across the United States. I mean, it gets treated differently in different jurisdictions, and there have been some pretty big inroads on broker liability. But obviously, yeah, I mean, I think, to take it out of the obviously, I'm the guy who shows up when everything's gone wrong, right? And there's been a crash and it's in litigation, and I've got to fix the problems as they are then. But a lot of the consulting work we do is to work with folks and say, look, let's talk about how to avoid ever getting in that situation in the first place. And so, yeah, so carrier vetting, right, is a big part of that. I mean, if there shouldn't really be a reason for the broker to be in there, but knowing that it's an increasing trend, I think everybody should be mindful of it and certainly be real careful who they're hiring.
Yeah, and from the broker, go ahead.
Yeah. The main question that I have here is trying to compare it with kind of how things run at the FAA or on the aviation side of things, because they're all considered carriers as well. And while maybe accidents don't happen as nearly as frequently as they do with trucks, do things get litigated on a state by state level, or is that at a, since aviation is more at a federal level, right? Is there more of a standard set of rules?
There should be. There should be. So right now we have a split in the circuits, right? So you have the case that our firm litigated, which is Aspen America, here in the 11th Circuit, which covers Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. Brokers are protected by the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, which essentially protects us from any type of state law causes of action that impact or have an impact on the broker's price, route, or service. And obviously, if you're liable, that's going to impact most likely your service and your price. And so there is a way for plaintiffs to get them out of that, which is the exception regarding with respect to motor vehicles. And the courts here in Florida, based on our case, properly align that says, hey, a broker has nothing to do with motor vehicles. Let's go ahead and leave them out. The safety exception does not save the plaintiff's negligence claims, which is generally your negligent hiring, negligent selection claims. Shippers have that same ability. They actually are one step removed, because if they didn't hire the motor carrier, then they're not generally in the forefront. And so the brokers are almost always getting brought in. Then you went into the Ying Yi case versus Global Trans up in the 9th Circuit, and it was great. I thought Ying Yi did a fantastic job, because for those of you, and I've given it, if you've seen me speak before when I talk about this case is a lot like Eminem in 8 Mile, where they wrap everything that's wrong with you. I know what you're going to say about me, other side, but just if another court wants to come at me, here's all the reasons why you're wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Well, then we did have a court just recently come out and say, well, we actually disagree. I thought the reasoning was really pretty poor. But we do have 2 circuits, because obviously out in California as well, in the 7th. So we have 2 that are for preemption, 2 that are not for preemption, and we are just trying to get to the Supreme Court, because I believe that the makeup of this court will allow broker preemption based on the way the F4A, the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act, was written.
Yeah, and just just to piggyback on that, just real quick. I mean, bring it down a notch, right? I mean, so you've got 11 federal circuits in the United States, right? And so those are the appellate courts for the federal district courts in that area, right? So you begin with what should be a uniform law, right? Congress passes a law and it applies across, to a certain area that Congress is regulating, and theoretically applies equally across all states. But once it works its way into the judicial system and courts have to interpret it, one court might interpret it differently than another. And certainly when it makes it to the appellate court level, one circuit interprets it differently than another. And so that's how you end up with what was once a uniform law now has disparate enforcement across the United States.
What are you guys' thoughts on the court cases taking place at I believe at the Supreme Court level right now, which is whether or not a broker is to be found liable for kind of included. It's part of the discussion, I guess, of what you guys maybe have been mentioning. How do you guys think through that case? I think it's TQL and CH Robinson, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Paul?
They're trying to get up to the Supreme Court. There is no case currently in front of the Supreme Court. You petition the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can pick and choose who they want. And I want to be clear, just because you get the broker out of this, and I think we all agree that judgments and nuclear verdicts are just out of control. The liability that we're throwing is making, and just because brokers, if they're able to jump out of this liability stream, that doesn't mean that the carrier all of a sudden has more liability. Most of the times, the motor carriers are providing, the minimum $750 under the MCS 90 because maybe the driver wasn't scheduled, the vehicle wasn't scheduled, whatever happens, but there's still an obligation for the insurance companies to provide coverage. They're getting out of it and just saying, here's my $750, I'm done, or here's my $1 million, I'm done. And so it's not like all of a sudden those motor carriers are going to be shook harder for these losses. Just because you take a party out doesn't mean that one person's liability increases. So I don't think that these are diametrically opposed between the broker and the carrier or even the shipper. It's just making sure that we keep separate the rights and responsibilities. I mean, if I go out and I get in trouble, or I have a terrible, I don't know if you guys have watched the Netflix documentary about, getting trapped on the cruise ship, right? That horrible situation that occurred.
I've not even been around to it. I heard it was crazy.
Do not watch it while eating. If you have that situation, I'm not going and suing my travel, my travel agent, right? Because they said, hey, this is a good cruise line to go on, right? I'm not sitting there suing my travel agent. It's not their responsibility. I provided two people together, and they are doing what they're doing as shippers providing goods, and a motor carrier is transporting the goods, and I put them together. And so to impose additional liability, especially when the FMCSA has repeatedly said this information is not for public consumption, is not a safety rating, this is just for priority in terms of on-site investigations, don't use it. Everyone's like, well, we're just going to use it anyways. And that's the frustrating part.
By the way, there's also sort of a cost here that we're not talking about, and that is sort of the strategy when a plaintiff sues. Sometimes it's a shotgun strategy, right? It's like, just let's sue everybody who touched this event. And the rationale behind that is, even though I might not actually legally win, I'm probably going to win in this trial court because maybe I'm in front of a judge who really isn't going to be able to parse these laws as well as an appellate court would. So that means we're going to have to take a trip to the appellate court if the defendant wants to get off the hook. And that's going to cost a ton of money. And so maybe they'll just pay me a settlement right now, for $10,000, $100,000. It's piracy. But the cost of defending these claims is something you can't forget about. So
I have a question. So there's many brokers, and we see it all over social media, where the broker's requiring the connection to a driver's ELD. And so the broker could potentially have access to all of the tracking, all of the hours of service, and what the truck is doing. How does that impact a case where the broker is not found liable because they don't control the truck or the driver?
Sure. There's been actually a lot of cases that have dealt with your macro points, your fork kites, your trucker tools, and the information that's providing is one-way information, right? And courts have actually done a really good job of saying, hey, this is one-way information that they are getting for purposes of coordinating and communicating either to the customer or so they can avoid having to do check calls. The ELD information that's getting provided is not necessarily their hours of service. It's just for location. The ELD is generally for the location information. And even if they provided the ELDs, they don't have the ability to control because they're not their employers. And so when you have these, and especially with the rules for purposes of driver coercion, right, your contract is with the motor carrier, not with the individual driver. And so any type of communication that you have is with the motor carrier. Hey, motor carrier, get your house in order. That is not necessarily a control of the individual driver.
What about the case where maybe the broker is potentially applying pressure to get the delivery done sooner? Is that the grounds for the broker taking on some liability?
Yep. So when you're dealing with any type of, F4A would say no. So under F4A preemption.
And Brian, F4A is what again?
The Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act.
Okay.
So F4A, I could say FA, but everyone would think I'm weird. So F4A, the preemption part comes in and says, well, we're not going to care about any of the state law negligence. So your negligent hiring, negligent selection, and some of them go as far as the control part for vicarious liability. So F4A does a lot of things. Now, for those jurisdictions that haven't been decided or have decided in the other way, yes, that is absolutely true. So if you are a broker, I would recommend, or what I recommend to my clients is, hey, let's get rid of all the any type of penalties for late delivery, any type of penalties that are not passed down from the shipper. If you pass it down from the shipper, your indemnification section should apply that, hey, you're just paying the charges that you caused me to pay here, but don't impose additional claims. They're professional truck drivers. Treat them with respect. Don't nickel and dime them, because you can easily step into control. Have respect for the separation between brokers and carriers. Trust that the carriers know what they're going to do, and they're going to say, well, but if they don't deliver on time, then my shippers will not hire me anymore. Well, then make sure that you form good relationships with these motor carriers. Make sure you form good relationships with the drivers. And yes, people have issues. Trucks do break down. It happens. And there are things, but if you have good communication and they trust you to provide that information, then that relationship can be saved, not by one single late delivery. And you should be pushing back on your customer, because they should also understand that happens.
Goes to say that as we move to an increasingly automated world, that the relationships are still going to remain a key factor here, right? It's putting the trust on who you hire and having a good vetting process for the most part, right? And I think some of the stuff feel free to disagree, but some of the stuff feels like there may not be an automated way to vet for some of the, let's say, driver quality, right? How good is the driver's talent, per se? How diligent are they? Right? Do you guys see it differently?
Billy?
I mean, you've got some. Well, I'm trying to understand your question. I mean, you're talking about a broker's access to driver's history.
No, just the communication part. If I'm correct, Christian, right? How
that's
how we can, So automating that process versus having the phone call for a check call. I think there's a lot of people in any age that sits here and says, I don't want to talk to anybody. Just text me, right? We're probably guilty of it. My mom calls me. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm not answering this phone. Text me, and we'll have more conversations that way, right? And so you have an opportunity to reach people in different ways. Same as the way some people like working in the office, some people like working from home, and there's people that are good with either. The same thing will be with electronic communication versus in-person communication. When I call somebody, I want to talk to a human, and maybe one day I won't be able to tell the difference. But as of right now, there will be drivers that want to talk about your day, want to know about what's going on. They want to form that relationship. They want to tell you why it's so important that they get home for after the shipment, why they need this shipment to rather than deadheading. And if you're just texting, then they don't feel heard.
Yeah.
I have a final question here. I think it's going to take up the last 4 minutes, but I figured since today we wrote about it, we might as well discuss it. There's a lawsuit. This is going to be a different topic related to freight media, the lawsuit between Dooner and Firecrown. Would either of you want to comment on this court case, or would you prefer not to?
Have you guys read it? Have you guys even read it?
Yeah, I would prefer not to. I think we will step back from that, and may the odds forever be in their favor.
we are taking a neutral stance on it as well, and Paul was able to get a comment from Craig, which we wrote about today. So for anybody interested and want
Freight Ever newsletter.
yeah, it's in our
Today.
newsletter today. So.
Well, I guess
Absolutely. Read those newsletters, guys. Subscribe. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like. I have no idea.
so. Yeah,
Is that how you do it? Did I do it right?
Yeah, we have obviously in today's newsletter we discussed the lawsuit that dropped that Dooner is suing Firecrown Media. But aside from that, like I guess from topics that we also discussed, is insurance rates. So Siva Logistics got hit with $18 million worth of cargo theft this year, which obviously also like one of the reasons why insurance rates are so much higher nowadays is because of the cargo theft. But also what was interesting was, I'm not sure if Brian or Bill, you've seen this, but FMCSA is to launch a fatal truck crash study in 20 years.
And I did, going back up to the SIVA thing, shippers need to do more. Just flat out, shippers need to do more. And you have, if anyone's seen me speak, I have beat this horse, I've kicked this horse, I've pushed this horse in a ravine, and then I've jumped on the horse and floated down the river with it. The situation with this is brokers pay tens of thousands of dollars to all these various sourcing companies for vetting. And then the shipper just can't be bothered to walk 53 feet. They can't walk 53 feet from their dock to the end of the trailer just to see who's written on the side of the cab. Now I understand that there will be companies that can, like we talked about at the beginning, can just put new placards on the side or new markings on the side. But for those fraudulent pickup ones where there was an innocent motor carrier that's like, oh, I thought this was a legit shipment. If the shipper just walked 53 feet and said, hey, is this the guy you hired? Probably half or more of the thefts would not be there, but shippers cannot be bothered. I had one shipper one time tell me on the phone, and I'm sorry I'm taking up all this time. One time I was on the phone, a large shipper, someone that you guys probably all know, and I was on with their carrier onboarding supervisor or president, and she goes, well, there won't be fraud because we give you guys a secret code. And I'm like, what? I was like, you do know we're a broker. They're like, but we gave you a secret code. That's how we know the carrier that comes in is the right carrier. And I said, well, if I'm a broker, I have to give that to the carrier. Yes, but that's how we know when the carrier comes in with the secret code. I said, what keeps that carrier from giving it to somebody else if it's a fraudulent party? And now we have a fraudulent party. And her mind was like blown. If you've seen the movie Something About Mary, it was like when Ben Stiller tells the guy, hey, yeah, you have 7-minute abs. Well, what happens when someone comes out with 6-minute abs? You're like, what? Nobody would ever do that. Nobody could ever. You can't even get your heart rate up. And that's what it feels like. That's what we are fighting with shippers, the complacency. And this is a transportation problem, not a supply chain problem. And that's the problem here. Shippers need to be more vested and they need to be held to account. And we try to do that in our contracts to push back against shippers. And any transportation attorneys out there or companies out there should get their transportation attorneys to do the same.
I feel like that the shipper just got so like mentally used to offloading the entire job to the brokers, and that one part of checking on who comes onto your premise just simply has become forgotten about. But that's a great, that's a great point. I haven't really thought about it that way. Brian, Billy, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a super helpful perspective. If anybody listening to this is looking to talk about somebody and get a legal perspective, how do they reach you guys?
So it's www.taylorlawpl.com is our website.
And then I can be reached at bnelson@taylorlawpl.com. And Billy's with a W. Yeah, you got to make it complicated.
At taylorlawpl.com.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'd love to have you guys back on again. I think this is it was a new perspective that we brought on, which was great. And looking forward to hearing more from you guys in the future. So thanks so much again for coming on, and see you all next week.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
So long.
See you later.